temporary replacement would be problematic in the views of some here at the White House. That would be Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, who happens to be the same person who named the special counsel in the first place. Chris and Allison?
Yes, it's complicated, Joe. Thank you for spelling it all out for us. So let's bring in our panel to discuss all of the breaking news. We have CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza, CNN political analyst Abby Phillip, and CNN counterterrorism analyst Philip Mudd. Great to have all of you. Chris Cillizza, Christopher Wray is the name that we now know, who will be named to the FBI. What do we know of him?
I mean, the biggest thing we know of him, politically speaking, right there is he was Governor Chris Christie's personal attorney during the whole closing of the lanes in Fort Lee that led to Chris Christie's presidential campaign never going anywhere and led to two of his top aides being convicted. Interesting in that Christie obviously had put himself way out there for Donald Trump back in February of 2016 with an endorsement. Has taken a lot of flack for it, did not wind up getting anything in the White House in the initial hires, has been critical as recently as yesterday of Trump's Twitter feed, as well as some other people within the Trump world. Possible that Christie recommended this guy to Donald Trump? Yeah, I think so. A sign that Chris Christie may be having his voice listened to? Sure. But look, broadly speaking, forget Christopher Wray just for a second. Why is Donald Trump announcing that this pick, which it's been about a month and a few days since Jim Comey was fired? Because we have Rod Rosenstein, because we have Dan Coates on the Hill today, because we have Jim Comey on the Hill tomorrow, because there's a whole slew of negative stories out there. Remember, Donald Trump at his heart is essentially a TV producer. He understands that you have to offer some counter-programming, and this is an attempt at counter-programming.
Well, look, and it's a good move
by
the president. It's got us talking. It's relevant information. And, you know, just as a little bit of a sidebar, just to put this to bed once and for all, this was told to us on Twitter. So if you want to know whether or not the president regards tweets as official policy statements, because that's what this is, a policy change, he's going to put in a new person. It's a big material move. He did it on Twitter. So forget about what Gorka and Kellyanne and everybody else says about the tweets are just fill in the blank of some type of nonsense. They matter. Now, there's something else that matters. We're getting ready for this Director Coates interview today. There's a new statement from the DNI, his agency that he oversees. It's from DNI spokesperson Brian Hale, and it says, Coates does not discuss his private conversations with the president. However, he has never felt pressured by the president or anyone else in the administration to influence any intelligence matters or ongoing investigations. So, Phil Mudd, give us your take on that statement. Does that conclude any speculation about appropriateness by the president? And what do you make of Christopher Wray coming into the agency?
Let's start with the statement. All he's trying to do, that is, Director Coates, is to go into the hearing, and as soon as somebody says, tell us about that conversation with the president, he's going to say, I already told you, I ain't talking about that. He's letting himself off the hook. That does not conclude the conversation about what the president said.
But he did say he's never felt pressured. So what door does that close? What door does that leave open?
Doesn't close any doors. So the special counsel, Robert Mueller, goes in to say, I don't care about pressured. I want to hear what the president said when, and I'll make the determination about whether that interaction was appropriate or not. Those words are very careful. Was he ever asked about the investigation? He didn't say he wasn't asked. He said he didn't feel pressured. I thought that was more about the hearing today than about getting him off the hook for further conversations with Robert Mueller. On the Wray issue, people like me are going to smell this like two dogs smelling each other on the sidewalk.
Thank you.
That's an image.
Well, you were just talking earlier, Allison, about whether females should be involved in health care issues. That made me really uncomfortable.
Like
so I get to
vasectomies?
say, that's right. Here's the issue. I have no reason to doubt whether he's a good nominee. No reason to doubt that. But the president had options. One of the options was John Pistol, whom I know well, the former deputy director of the FBI. One was the acting director, Andy McCabe. Neither has any linkage, as far as I know, with Trump people. Both of them declined. So the president chooses someone who does have direct linkage not only with Chris Christie, but evidently with a law firm from which the president has selected other individuals for his administration. People are going to say this fellow Wray has a history in federal prosecutions. That's great. Is there anything that suggests for somebody who's going into, remember, a 10-year term at the FBI, is there anything to suggest that he will give primacy to the White House over simply pursuing the facts in federal investigations? This one smells a little, and I'm sure the Congress is going to smell a lot.
And how about when the senators ask him, did the president ask you what you think about the Russia investigation and what you would do about it, and whether or not, because the president's feelings are so strong? What is Wray going to say? Is he going to say it didn't come up? Would anybody believe that? Will it affect his confirmation? Big questions.
Abby, what do you think? I mean, what do you think happened to the Congressman Trey Gowdy option and the Senator John Cornyn and the Joe Lieberman and all the other names that have been floated? I mean, this Christopher Wray one is out of left field.
Yeah, well, they're all those names that you just mentioned are all political people. This is one of the bigger sticking points for the White House. And perhaps to their credit, they were thinking about the fact that people in the FBI probably would have gone into full revolt if he had named a political figure, a former politician, a current politician to that post. So in some ways, Christopher Wray is someone who has experience in the agency. Yes, he has ties to Chris Christie, but he is not a politician specifically, and he's been in that building before. He's worked under George W. Bush. So I think the White House is looking in the other direction there because they want to kind of get ahead of some of this pushback. I think they expect a fair amount of it, but I think there's a probably good chance that Chris Wray is going to be easily confirmed in the Senate because beyond the ties to Christie, I'm not aware of any huge red flags here, and that's what the White House was aiming for. They don't necessarily want this to be a gigantic fight at this stage.
That's true. That's true. But Chris, also let's not lose sight. To your own point, Wray has been out there. He was one of the names, and it was a little bit of political speculation about Christie versus Giuliani. And who's going to get their choice in there. And now we know the name. But as you pointed out, the timing is not a coincidence. We can show the hearing room right now, which is the beginning of a two-day affair here, where we're going to hear questions asked, and yes, as Phil Mudd says, Director Coates is throwing a big bucket of cold water on any anticipation of him dishing about talking to the president. But the stakes are real, and in part that's reflected by the president's desire to shift attention.
Yeah, so first on Wray, look, the other thing to remember is why did the White House settle on him is, Phil makes this point, other people told him no, right? I mean, this is not necessarily a job everyone is clamoring for, particularly if you look at what happened to the last guy. That's number one. Number two, there are no coincidences in politics. This is my attitude when a politician says, "Oh, I was just driving through Iowa and I just thought I'd, stop and meet the local Democrats." It's not a thing, right? Like the reason they do that is because they want to run for president at some time, or they think they could be president at some time. Same thing here. Even if Donald Trump didn't have a history, not just with reality TV, but in his back and forth with the New York tabloids, a history of trying to manipulate media coverage to make it look more beneficial to him, to change stories, to throw some chum over here, which he does. Even if he didn't have that history, I would draw the conclusion that this is clearly meant to take some of that coverage from Comey, Rosenstein, Coates, and all the news that's been out there about that, and that will be out when they testify over these next 48 hours, and have some of it be, who's Christopher Wray? What's this pick like? It's a card that presidents have to play. I'm not critical of it. Other presidents do the same thing, but he's clearly playing a card here.